let's talk about a 5-step checklist to ensure performance-based contracts mitigate risk. Organizations are increasingly looking to drive greater value from their suppliers. Performance-based contracts are an important tool to deliver value, and they conform to an RFP type of solicitation process. Now, let's talk about 5 steps to mitigate risks and enhance performance, which in turn provides more value. Step 1, outline the larger business objectives. I know, like, are you serious, Jeanette? Yes, I'm serious, because I see enough statements of work and technical specifications where I don't see the larger business objectives for the relationships clearly laid out. So here are 3 sub-steps to step 1. 1, outline the business objectives in the statement of work or the technical specification. 2, what will the supplier do to meet those objectives? That also must be outlined. And 3, how will the contract manager or project manager make sure that the contractor is meeting those objectives? That third bullet is critical to mitigate risk. Does the person managing the contract have the right tools to track and ensure that the supplier is meeting the objectives? That's often the weak link in a performance-based contract. The objectives are not laid out, they're not tied to what the supplier is going to be measured on, and the contract manager doesn't have the right tools in the contract to manage performance. Step 2, fully define or describe the what of the work. We spend so much time thinking about how the work will be done that we don't think about if all of the what needs to be done is described. In fact, my colleague Audrey Cushing and I were talking about a situation where she reviewed a request for proposal and not all of the services were fully described in the statement of work. So this is exactly what we're talking about. We spend so much time thinking about how that we often miss an important part of what. Now in my book, Vested Outsourcing, we talk about doing a taxonomy of services or functions. You can certainly reach out to me if you'd like to know more. Okay. Oh, and finally, look for implied obligations. I almost forgot. Implied obligations are not spelled out in the agreement, and they will cause work to be poorly performed or not performed at all. An implied obligation is something that is, as the word says, implied between the customer's work or within the supplier's work, but it's not clearly defined who's going to do what. So it can cause a he said, she said kind of atmosphere. Okay, step 3, define the performance metrics. The adage, what gets measured gets done, applies to performance-based agreements. You need to have metrics, service level agreements, KPIs, critical success factors, etc. The problem is we often take something that we've already used and we include it in this agreement, but we fail to determine if this agreement needs something else in addition, an additional metric, a different SLA, a different critical success factor, etc. So think about looking at this agreement to determine if this agreement needs a particular metric, and then write that metric into the statement of work. Okay, step 4, clearly define acceptance procedures and acceptance criteria. Now, acceptance is super theoretical until you receive a defective good or a non-conforming service. And then you're like, whoa, this is super clear. I don't have a process for testing that service, or I don't really have good criteria for determining if this good is defective or compliant. Now, conditional acceptance, which is a legal term, basically means that the customer will only accept the contractor's goods and services when they meet the conditions in the contract. But that means that those conditions have to be clearly written into the contract before execution, or as a contract modification if you're so lucky. Now, this is critical because you really need the supplier to accept the terms and conditions of acceptance, the criteria, and ideally understand the procedure before they sign the agreement. That way, if something is non-conforming, you clearly can point to the criteria in the agreement that says it's non-conforming, which leads to step 5, define the process for correcting problems. So unfortunately, things happen, and sometimes goods do not meet criteria and services are not conforming. So you need some sort of corrective action and cure language. So we need to think about what happens when we get that defective good. Do we have the right to notify? Do we have the right to ask for a defective good? It likely is not a warranty issue if it's not yet been accepted. Do you see the connection? So we want to think about very clearly how we have processes in place, more for services than for goods, to make sure that we don't accept anything too early so that we can require rework rather than triggering some sort of a warranty claim, which in services can be very, very difficult. All right. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in de-risking your contract, consider my De-risking Your Contract e-workshop.